Hello, everybody. Hey, nature fan. Gosh darn it. Okay, let's see. I think I got it. No, I don't. Anyway, I hope your day has gone good since we last talked. Oh, I forgot. Come on. No. So, I don't know how this is going to go. I should have done way more research with it. Oops, I don't want that. Am I looking okay? Do I like onions? Why would I? That's the weirdest question. Do you like onions? Hey, Carrie. No one RZ2KU. You need to. I don't even know why you would ask that. We're going to give it another couple of minutes and then I'm going to get started, y'all. This is going to be the first in a series. I hope they get better. This one's a little bit, yeah. Actually, no, I don't. And if I do, if there's one up, it's for my writing because I was going to sell some of my spooky stories. It is not for that purpose. And it's not even active. That's the cool thing about that site is that it's for way more than that disgusting purpose. I'm not. Um so anyway, we have a whole list of or I have a whole list of topics on this one. Um Centered around human history that we're going to be covering and maybe more as I come up with ideas. So hopefully they work. We just have to cross our fingers and hope that they work. So tonight, oh wait, I have a message. I don't know what it is. I'm going to really quick put a share and put it on Facebook really quick. Just to see if we drum up more business. Okay. Now we can do it. Okay. So I don't have a quiz for us today because I'm doing a poll. But tonight, we're going to step back into history. Sort of. Oh, excuse me. At first, we're just going to talk about a little bit of history, and then we're going to focus more on the plants and why maybe they would have been brought over from Europe. So before we started like growing plants, we foraged. And foraging is basically going out into the wild, finding the food, and preparing it and eating it. Now, I don't know exactly what the diets were like of early humans or earlier in our history, but what I do know is that for 95% of our history, we were foraging. Basically for sustenance. 12,000 years ago, we shifted our lives big time. And we became, well, we were transitioning from foragers to starting to live within a community. And we still may have foraged, we still may have hunted, but there was safety in numbers. We learned by being out there what plants were edible, which ones were poisonous, which ones could feed us, and which ones could heal us. Eventually, we learned that, hey, we can take seeds from plant A and grow it in our gardens. What we grew changed over time, and vice versa. You know, I like to think that we didn't know, that it was sort of trial by error. I don't know. I've never had kids, okay? But I heard on a TV show that humans had a thing. Foods that are bitter when you first put them in your mouth potentially are poisonous. And so you would not stick something in your mouth, eat it. If it was bitter, you would spit it out. Children sort of do the same thing. If a food is bitter, we prefer not to eat it as children. Now, not everybody is the same. Hi. Hello. Hello. 10,000 years ago, it's cool to have you. Welcome. We are discussing the history of humans and nature, and this is one of our first episodes of it. We are talking herb gardens, or gardens themselves. So over 100, well, we'll go with what I have. 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, something happened that changed everything. Not only were we growing food, but we were doing it within a community. This meant that even though you had to grow food, we could now start looking at what it meant to be a community. And we started, like I said, growing food. Move forward 4,000 years or later 4,000 years ago, and we have evidence in Egypt on the tombs of them growing food. And not only were they growing food, but they were depending upon the cycles of the year to know when to plant and when not to plant. And they were storing food as well. Now, flash forward to the Middle Ages, and plants of many kinds were being grown in gardens and in monasteries. And you might be thinking, why would a bunch of monks need to have a garden? Easy. They were growing food to be self-reliant. Now, they were also growing medicinal plants, plants that they knew or believed could heal, because monasteries very often were the healing areas. So if you were sick, you might go to the monastery and get better. Maybe. Now, they would have grown healing herbs as well as fruits and vegetables and other stuff like that. Now, there were people, of course, who raised their own stuff. There were people who still went out and foraged. There were still people who might have been looked upon. You're welcome. There might have been people who were looked upon as witches because they were wise and they knew what plants could be used to cure maybe gout. Or maybe your baby was colicky and you needed something to curb that. So you went to them to get better. Castles, large houses, manors, they all had their herb gardens. And by the Renaissance, we were growing plants, but we were doing so with design in mind. We were growing plants to be decorative. Not completely, but we were starting that game. Now, between 1492 and the 1600s, something else happened. We were leaving the New World, or the Old World, I should say, and coming to the New World, and different people for different reasons. But one of the things that we did is we came with the foods that we knew. We came with the medicines that we knew. And so these new arrivals would come. Keep in mind, they did not know about a lot of the crops that were grown in North America yet. These people came with wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Now, from what I understand, barley, rye, and oats were typical of people who, at least prior to coming to America, wheat was sort of a rich person's grain. Lower classes would not have had wheat. You would have had rye, oats, and barley. And those were your grains. So maybe by the 1600s, we were growing wheat. But these people came with it. And they came with more than just wheat. They came with other vegetables. But when they came here, they didn't know the native plants. They didn't know about corn. They were sort of clueless. So when they got here and maybe things went south, then the indigenous people that were here helped them out, which may or may not be a good thing, and we will definitely talk about that later, as it pertains to the outdoors. Gardens here were commonly centered in the back. Now, maybe your kitchen, if you were a big family, a wealthy family, in a place where it was warm, like South Carolina, Virginia, you may have had your kitchen separate from your home. That was very common. But let's talk about some of the plants that you might have had in your garden at this time period. And I'm not covering all of them, but I'm covering a lot of them. So madder, M-A-D-D-E-R, was a plant that was raised for a dye. Because remember, back then, you didn't go to the store and your clothes were already a color. You raised your plants. I don't know if I said this. I didn't. You raised your sheep. You raised your plants that you could use to make clothing out of. And you would have dyed those clothes the color that you wanted them. So matter was used to make red, pink, and purple, depending upon what you added to it. It was this plant that made the uniforms of the redcoats red. Woad, WOAD, was used to dye clothes blue. So what you would do is you would make your dye, you would put your clothes in it, let them sit to absorb the dye, and then you would take them out. Now with woad, you did not have blue immediately. It would be greenish yellow. But once it was exposed to the air, it reacted with gases in the air and it would go blue. Pennyroyal. No, not that I know of. Now remember, they did not have necessarily super harsh soaps. I don't know if they were using lye at that point or not. But woad or pennyroyal, which is another plant that they would have used, would be used as an insect repellent. And so you would grow this plant, you would take the leaves or the flowers, and you would put those on your clothing, maybe rub it on your hands, and you had you would have had your clothes. You would have had you would have had insect repellent. And that may not have been the only one that they used. Yes, they they would have brought dandelion. So they would have used yellow. It would have given them yellow, yellowish green. The roots would give them sort of a muted brown. Yes, very much so. But I've kind of got over it. Um, agrimony would be grown for leaves, the seeds, and the flowers to treat wounds. They would make a tea that was used to treat digestive problems, coughs, and sore throats. Another plant, and we actually had this plant in my yard. It is called bouncing bet, and it is a plant that would have escaped from the gardens. This plant was used to make soap. It would not be a harsh soap, but it would be used to wash skin, clothes, and other household items. The flowers would be picked and stuck into drawers as potpourri or potpourri, but it would not be ingested. Salad burnet was another plant that was used to treat bleeding. It would stop bleeding. It was a culinary herb. Young leaves were said to taste like cucumbers, and it could be cooked. Another plant that we see coming over was pot marigold. It's not the same marigold that we grow in our gardens, although they did. This was brought over as a vegetable, and the leaves would have been eaten as spinach. During the Civil War, they would have used these as a poultice on wounds also. They also would have brought chives with them. Comfrey is an old plant, and it was used as a poultice applied to broken bones or wounds that just were not healing. You might have cooked the leaves in soups or put in the salads. However, don't do that. Don't eat comfrey. It is toxic. We know that now. So don't do it. Another really cool plant was called alecost, or as it was also called, Bible leaf. And they call it that because these leaves off this plant were used as bookmarks. Something that's really cool about this plant is when they were in church, maybe the sermon was just a little bit dry and you caught yourself falling asleep. People would sniff the leaves to wake up. Leaves were also put into books to keep insects from eating them. Some plants were used to make extracts. Lavender was one of them. So you would make your extract. You would put that extract on your head for headaches and insomnia. The flowers would be put into adult beverages and tea. It was also used to get rid of bad smells. Remember, in a city, cities were not clean places at all, especially in the old country. I don't know what they were like here in the States. I'm guessing sort of the same. And so you would put plants that smelled good in your home to freshen the air. There was a belief that bad smells caused disease. Fennel, the type of fennel that we put in sausages, this was a plant that had multiple uses. One of those beliefs said that during certain times of the year, you would put pieces of fennel up above your doors, and it was said to keep evil spirits from coming into the house. They do smell bad. I agree. Well, but like, for instance, if you're outside and a horse takes a dump outside your door, it's going to smell, but it's not necessarily bad. Like, it's not going to cause you to get sick unless you touch it and then don't wash your hands, that sort of stuff. You would also put fennel in your keyholes, and that was believed to keep ghosts from coming in. Seeds and leaves were, of course, added to food for flavoring. Fennel tea would have been gargled as mouthwash. You also would have given it to babies as a cure for colic. Now, feverfew is another plant that was used to keep bugs away. You would have pockets to keep bees away. It leaves used to soothe migraines. If you grew feverfew, you kept it away from your beehives because it actually contains chemicals that are not good for insects. Carnation flowers were added to soups, salads, sauces, and wines, adult beverages. It was dried flowers were also used to make potpourri and infused with drinks to treat fevers. Germander tea was used to treat gout and rheumatism. Lemon balm leaves were added to jams and jellies. If you grew it, you would also rub the leaves on wood and it would polish the wood. Peppermint and spearmint, those leaves were used for teas, which were good for headache, heartburn, indigestion, insomnia, and teas for the stomach. And of course, perhaps other uses. Rosemary was used as a seasoning. It was also used, again, to freshen the air in your house. Now, rue, R-U-E, was used as a disinfectant. It was used to ward off the plague. You would dip it in water and then sprinkle that around your home to get rid of fleas. It was used to preserve sage, was used to preserve meat and to flavor food. Santolina was, you would boil the leaves and flowers in milk and drink that, and that was used to banish worms out of the body. Infused with adult drinks, and it was used to treat jaundice. And again, the plant was used to freshen the air. It was also used as a moth repellent. Rose and peppermint geranium leaves, again, used to freshen the air. French sorrel was used for food, very much like the wood sorrel that I talked about in videos. They would parboil it, and that would help break down some of the chemicals that would cause kidney stones. Tansy was used to discourage insects, so you might have used it to get rid of lice. It was added to food as a flavoring, but again, you should never do this because it can have adverse effects on the body. It was also used to preserve the dead and to keep insects out of coffins. Thyme was used for cooking. It was also used if you drank a tea made from thyme leaves. it was said to let you see fairies. Enough said. Oregano not only was a spice, but it was used as an antiseptic. It would soothe the nerves, and it could be used to dye clothes purplish or reddish brown. So there is that. Wood betony, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, was used as a gargle for sore throats, an infusion drink for diarrhea. Dried leaves were used to make you sneeze, to clear out your sinuses. Now, if you were going to be growing plants for dyes, you might have used Queen's Anne lace for yellow dyes. Yes, they would have brought that over from Europe. That was not a native to the United States. No. Used sort of in the same way. Oops. Snuff was actually tobacco. And you would have inhaled that through the nose instead of smoking it. And it was a big fashion statement. You would have flavored it, sort of, with roses and lavender and cloves, jasmine, bergamot. But yeah. But yes, it also would make you sneeze. But it did have medicinal uses as well. It wasn't just a fashion statement. It was used to cure headaches and was even thought to protect one from the plague. For green, you might have used lilac, lily of the valley. If you were lucky and you knew that black walnuts could be used, you would have used the husk for goldenrod, the husk of black walnuts to make brown dye. Now, another plant that is fairly common in my yard anyway, and it came over from Europe, was ground ivy. And ground ivy, again, was used to flavor food, but it was also used to flavor a certain adult beverage. Probably our next, I don't know what our next journey into history is going to be. But I think let's see. Some of these are going to be longer, I promise. I went through the last couple of nights and worked out different topics that fit this category. And I have a list, like half a page at least, of topics that fit the human history and nature topic. I need to. Whoops, what happened? Any questions? We are going to be doing in May is our next jump, and it's going to be ergot, which we will be talking about what it is and why it's a part of history. We're going to be doing human history and nature. We will be talking about silk and the Silk Road and the silk trade. We will be doing the plague. And again, we probably are going to be talking about plague doctors and what plants they may have had in their hoods. We will... Oh, wait, I guess that's it. But there will be more coming. It was used for animal sickness, but it was also used for other things. Some of the topics we're going to be covering include early Homo species, what farmers would have been growing. So we're taking a step back and looking at what we were actually growing. Hunters and gatherers, talking about that stage in our lives. Early humans and predation. So we're looking at animals that would have taken humans, or early humans, or early Homo species as well. What if domestication of animals and plants, using plants and animals as tools, meaning your cow has died and now you're going to use its parts. Villages and what that meant for humans and what it meant for nature. Living in the Nile, the gods of Egypt and the animals that they represent. Paper. Tyrrhenian purple and what that is and where it came from. I don't think so. I don't think so. You would have no. If it were like the 1700s and you were desperate, you would have an hour. You would have about 1 hour, less than an hour. You would have less than an hour maybe to do it. After that, the milk is no good. But that nugget, I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to find out. I wouldn't even call it a survival tip. I would call it a maybe tip. Because, not everything is 100%. Cities and disease, the church and animals. So we'll look at Lent. We'll look at some of the crazy things that came out of the church. And we'll look at animals that were said, you can eat this because it's a water animal. We'll look at science that comes out of the Middle East, spices, the tribes in America. We'll look at buffalo. We'll talk about how animals, we'll talk about how the West went from having horses to not having horses, and what that meant for the tribes. We'll look at ethnobotany. We will look at Polynesia expanding from their original territories and what they moved with them. We'll look at domestication in the Americas. We will bounce back to the Middle East and look at more science. We will talk about voyages of exploration, Spanish conquest, and new foods, and a return to Europe. Scientific revolution in Europe in the 16th and 17th century, America's fur trade, the Industrial Revolution, pollution begins, what it meant to animals and plants as people moved west, Lewis and Clark and their expedition, Europeans entering Australia, whaling in the 17th and 18th century, medical advances, destroying the West, and the Dust Bowl. Those are some of the topics we're going to be covering as we discuss human history and nature. So I hope some of those will spark an interest. Oh yeah, some of those things are really morbid, but we will cover other morbid things as well. We may also look at mummification. As some of that revolves around nature as well. But we'll fine-tune that and stick with only the mummification going on in Egypt. No. Probably not. That will probably stay within the confines of my friend's channel. Coming up later this week, we have some other things that are going to be popping up. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. That's not what I wanted. So coming up later this week, we have Hollywood Animals on Friday at 1 p.m. Herbal Tea with Me on Friday at 6. Exploring Nature, Walking Palm and Cannonball Tree, as well as Black Sapote and Mexican Plum at 6 p.m. And I think that's it for this week. Yes, but we're more concerned about the way that we'll talk about them, but we're also going to talk about some of the bad stuff that happened in relation to animals. coming up next week. Next week. Wow. It's almost time. Hey, guys, I know I talk about liking the live, but make sure that when you come into live that you share it. So next week we have exotic foods, we have a zoo to do, and learn to care. It has been I can tell you roughly just lives for this last week. So this live has had 5 views. Game day is not calculated yet. 80 the quokka had 89, blue-throated macaw 81, dimorphodon 85, allosaurus and brachiosaurus 114. I have no idea. Can you identify me? Had 28 views. Exhibit focus 89 views. So I'm going to be doing hopefully other stuff to hopefully bring people in. I got to figure something out. Why does it look like one of the things I'm going to do is probably do more shorts. We're going to go back to doing the animal facts, nature facts, where it's just quick 15-second short. Because right now and I have a bunch that haven't been posted yet. Mammoths and Pyramids scored 399 views. I have a 275, a 189, 117, 262, 502, 369, 396, 910. So we have like plenty of views on the shorts, but yeah. I may go back to doing like pop-up shorts or pop-up lives, because it was during those that we picked up a bunch of people. I am going to do my closing. You guys don't have to. You don't have to leave. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know how that works. You don't have to leave. I'm just closing out. Well, everyone, that's our journey through the garden for tonight. From the first foragers 12,000 years ago to the colonial settlers who brought their Bible leaves and soap plants across the ocean, we've seen how humans have always looked to the earth for survival, healing, and even a little magic. Next time you're out for a walk and see some goldenrod or thyme, remember you might be looking at a plant that once warded off ghosts or helped a warrior stay alive. Thanks so much for spending your evening with me. If you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next game day or whatever else that it is that we're doing. Until then, keep foraging for the truth, stay curious, and watch out for what might be hiding in your own backyard. Good night, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Sometimes these endings kill me. I still have to do a video. But I'm going to relax a little bit before I do that. We have 9 votes. I'm thinking it's somehow people can not participate in chat. Or they're on their TVs. Or whatever the case may be. Excuse me, guys. I'm going to use Friday's lives as sort of except for the 1 p.m. live, I'm going to use, I might go live earlier for an hour. Just for a chat. Yep. I'm actually using a charger I got with one of my phones a while back. I got it from Cricket. It has 2 prongs or 2 slots on the bottom. And then I can insert the charger cord into it. And I'm still using that cord that they gave me at Cricket for free. And it seems to be working. Well, guys, I think I'm going to go. Thanks for coming in. I will see you guys in the next one. Be good, everybody. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.